Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. Guys, by now you know all the good stuff. Smash the like button, hit the like button. I really appreciate you guys hitting the like button. Hit the subscribe button, share my videos. Really appreciate it. Guys, I wanted to talk a little bit about Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. Terence Crawford has said that Errol Spence is avoiding him, and he's also said that Terence Crawford has also said that he's leveled above Errol Spence. I think this is a bit like the Tyson Fury situation where, you know, everyone's hailing Fury the best in the world. I feel like there's a consensus formed around Crawford where everyone's hailing him the best in the world. A lot of people seem to think he's the best welterweight in the world, and they think his skills are on another level, just like Fury in the heavyweight division. You know, sometimes the eye test tells us that this guy's the best in the world. But he needs to prove it against all the top challengers in his division. And now he's fighting Sean Porter, which is going to be a very good match. It's going to be a very interesting fight. And it's going to be a fight where, let's be honest, some people seem to think that it could go the other way because he's fighting a top welterweight. And that's what we want to see when he fights the top contenders. We want to see him fight the best guys. Terence Crawford is a quality fighter. I've said it many times. I think he's a world-class fighter. I think he's got unbelievable ability. I think he's very, very gifted. I think the fact that he can fight orthodox and southpaw and fight in both stances as equally as good as each other. Like, he can fight southpaw as well as he can fight orthodox, which you don't really see before. You see people that were you know, can switch and were switch it as they preferred one stance. Crawford can fight as well in both stances, and he's really good in both stances. I feel like when he goes into that southpaw stance, he becomes a monster, and he becomes a guy that's looking to really destroy you. But even as a orthodox fighter, he can take you out. And that's unique for a fighter to have. And it definitely must put the other fighter off. You know, when a guy's constantly changing stances, surely it can't be, it must be very difficult for a fighter to adjust when you've got somebody so skilled that can fight in both stances. That could be a problem for Spence. Spence is a very good, technically sound fighter who's got a very good chin, who's not got the fastest feet, but he's very strong and he's a big welterweight. I've always thought that Spence beats Crawford. I don't know whether over the recent, you know, couple years, I don't know whether my opinion's changed. And the reason why I say my opinion might have changed, because there's a lot that's happened in Spence's career. You know, he suffered a car accident, and then he suffered an eye injury. There's a lot happening in Spence, which is unfortunate. Injuries can sometimes derail a career, but there's no sign at the minute that, you know, it has affected him, because we haven't seen it in the ring. You know, he came back from the car accident and outclassed Danny Garcia. We've also not seen him back from the eye injury, so we don't really know. But I want to see Terence Crawford beat Errol Spence. How do I see that fight playing out? I don't know. I don't know, because again, it's one of those matchups where it's very hard to call it. It's hard to come to a conclusion. Now, you would say that Terence Crawford has more tools in the toolbox. He's a more skilled fighter. Some may not agree. But Errol Spence is a bigger man. He's a stronger man. He's got a very good chin. He's strong. He comes forward and he wears you down. And can he do that to someone as good as Terence Crawford? Now, we've seen him do it to Kell Brook. But can he do it to somebody as good as Terence Crawford, as skilled as Terence Crawford? That only time will tell, if he can or not. If he can wear someone like Crawford down, if he can push Crawford back, push him on the back foot, wear his body down like he did with Kell Brook. Crawford is a much more skilled fighter than Kell Brook. He's more skilled than Mikey. He's more skilled than Danny Garcia, you know, and he's more skilled than Porter. He has more in his arsenal, you know. Like I said before, he can switch stances. that's going to be a problem for Errol Spence. That's going to be something that Errol Spence hasn't seen before. This is a very, very intriguing fight, and it needs to happen. I think hopefully now that Porter and Crawford have got this deal over the line, we get to see Crawford v Spence in the near future, especially now that Manny's retired, because we're never going to see Manny Pacquiao back in the ring. So now these guys have no excuses to fight each other, because there's no other big fight for each other than themselves, because Manny Pacquiao's gone. So that big money fight against the legend is now not there. So they need to fight one another. They need to get in the ring with one another and give the fans what they want to see, because the fans have wanted to see this fight for a couple of years now, since Crawford entered the welterweight division, and since Crawford became a world champion, became the WBO champion and beat Jeff Horn. You know, the fans have wanted to see that fight. And it seems like that it's been avoided, maybe because they're trying to make the fight bigger. But I think it's got to the point now where I think both of them need each other. And this is going to, even though Errol Spence has got a better resume and got better names on his record, this is going to determine Errol Spence's legacy. Because if Crawford dominates Errol Spence, people are going to question how good was Errol Spence. If Crawford gets dominated by Errol Spence, people are going to question Crawford and say, well, you know, how good was he? Even though if he can get past Porter, you know, that will definitely be viewed as a credible win. However, Errol Spence fight would be his legacy fight. That would be like your Hagler Hearns, your Hagler Leonard. That's a legacy fight. That's the legacy. Those are legacy defining fights. Those are ones that people are going to look back, like Wilder Fury. Those are the ones that people are going to look back when it's all said and done, and look at your career and say, that was the biggest fight of your career. Those fights define you. Mayweather, Pacquiao. Those fights are the ones that define you. Those are the legacy fights. Those are the fights that people say these two were the best in the division. So those fights are the legacy defining fights. And that's why it's very important for the sport, and it's important for both fighters, and it's important for both fighters to prove that they're the best. And I hope we can get Crawford and Spence in the near future. I hope there's no shenanigans. Now that we've got Crawford-Porter, there seems like there's an avenue for Crawford-Spence down the road. And I think the biggest thing is that Manny Pacquiao's retired. So neither of them have that fight there. Neither of them have that big payday against a legend, because Manny Pacquiao's gone. So Crawford and Spence have to now really get in the ring with each other, in my opinion. I don't think there's any other big fight really out there that's going to generate the numbers, the pay-per-view for each other. I don't think, unless Crawford maybe fights, Spence goes up and fights Canelo, I don't think there's any other big fight out there for him that can generate that kind of money or interest as the Crawford fight can. So I think it makes sense for Spence to take that fight, especially now that Manny's gone, because Manny Pacquiao would have probably been a bigger payday for Spence. But Manny Pacquiao's not there anymore. He's retired. So the fight with Crawford and Spence now is probably the biggest fight for both guys, unless Spence wants to jump up 2 weight classes and fight, you know, Canelo Alvarez, or jump 2 or 3 weight classes to fight Canelo, which wouldn't be practical, wouldn't be realistic, and would be a dangerous fight for him. And he'd be risking a lot, but he would get a huge payday. But he'd also get a big payday against Crawford. It may not be as big as the one that he would get against someone like Canelo, but it's a more realistic fight, a more winnable fight, and a fight that would prove whether he's the best in his weight class, which is a more appealing fight for me. And it should be a more appealing fight for Spence, because Spence needs to prove he's the best in his division. And for him to do that, he needs to beat the other best guy that people think is the other best guy. And the other best guy is seen as Terence Crawford. So guys, leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'd love to know your opinion. Who wins this fight? Would Terence Crawford beat Errol Spence? Who do you favor in this fight? Would Terence Crawford outclass Errol Spence? Or do you think Errol Spence will be too big and too strong and Terence Crawford beats Errol Spence? Errol Spence beats Terence Crawford? What do you guys think? Let me know your opinion. Let me know your thoughts. I want to know what you guys think. I want to know whether you think that Terence Crawford would be too much for Errol Spence, or Errol Spence would be too much for Terence Crawford. Leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think, guys. And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.